Okay.
Okay, we are broadcasting. Davia, I'm gonna kind of watch as people join here and I'll let you lead.
Okay, so I can't see any of that stuff from my screen. It just says that there are participants joining. So welcome everybody. Hi, and thanks so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure for me to be able to ask Darla to hop on to this Prenote online event to talk to us, because Darla probably doesn't know this, but I stalked her for a few months before actually reaching out to her to learn more about what it is that she does and how what she does could support us here in our little corner of the world. And really and truly, when you're talking about somebody who is a transformation guru, you're in the right place when you're talking to Darla. So I'm really, really happy to be able to share this treasure that I have found with my little piece of the world here in Connecticut, and of course with our extended Ladies Power Lunch family. So Darla, welcome, and thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Really happy to have you.
It is an honor, for everyone watching. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Davia for my podcast and my community. So I'm really, really excited to be here with you and your people.
Yay.
And we do have, I'm seeing people. I see Karen, I see Lisa, Lorraine, I see a bunch of people. Davia, do you want me to promote them to where we can see them on video, or do you want to keep them off video and just do the chat?
I don't know, whatever you are most comfortable with is 100% fine with me.
I am totally good. Here's what I'm thinking. I see a hand raised. Oh, and then it went down. So if you guys have questions, pop them in the chat, and we will, we'll kind of go into if we want to do interactive and coach someone live at the end, and then we'll bring you on video.
Yay. Awesome.
Great. Awesome. So Davia, talk a little bit about your event and your people, and let me know. I have an outline of what I would like to share with people today, but I want to really meet your needs. So feel free to interview me and I will weave in my content.
Awesome. So Ladies Lunch, as those of you who are on the call know, is just a group of women who come together to support each other in our businesses, where we have families, we have businesses, or we're in corporate positions that require oversight. And it's really nice to have a place where we can get together, support each other, talk about the challenges that we might be having, and to really have community surrounding that. It's interesting because we started with just 6 ladies in a Ruby Tuesday, and now our reach is about, when you consider all the women who are associated with the organization and putting together the Ladies Lunch events, our reach is about 60,000 women. So it's just wonderful. It's wonderful how organically it's grown. And we have coming up our spring conference, which is going to be on March 16th. It's actually exactly 2 weeks from today. And we will be having as our theme Transformation 2020. And 2020, it's an awesome year, in my opinion, Darla, because one, it's the beginning of a new year. That's where we are. And we're about to start the second quarter, and it's really a great opportunity to really look at our goals for 2020 and see where we are and what we can do going forward. Number two, it is the beginning of a new decade. I know everybody counts their decade a little bit differently. Some count it, we'll start counting it next year, but I'm going to count it this year. And I mean, how many times in our lifetime, when we're actually grown-up adults, do we have the opportunity to celebrate a new decade? Not tremendously a lot. So I feel like we should really go for it. And of course, it's a leap year, so we have 24 whole extra hours.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with all of that, you know? And then there is all the spiritual meanings behind 2020 that I'm not expert at, but I'm made to understand that it's wonderful. So I think if anybody was ever thinking of ever doing any kind of transformational work, this is the year for it to happen. And
Yeah,
so we
I love
invite
that.
everybody to our event.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. And it's happening in just a few weeks, right?
Yes, 2 weeks from now on the 16th of March, it's going to be at the Doubletree Hilton in Bristol. And anybody who's interested in checking that out, they can go to our website, ladiespowerlunch.com, and grab their ticket there.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, I'm not able to be at the actual event because I'm moving. So I'm so excited to get to share a little bit here with folks live. And I am traveling. We're in the midst of moving. So I don't have my normal lighting. So I'm noticing. Just bear with me with all of my lights shining on my face over here. Davia, when I tuned in to your community, and guys, just a little bit about me. My name is Darla LaDoux. I've been leading transformational retreats for 10 years now. We have worked with thousands of entrepreneurs all around the world to help them align with their personal truth and lead their business from a place of that divine connection to source. And I didn't have that language for it in the beginning. I talked a lot about alignment. My first business was called Align and Profit. But I was doing retreats and creating opportunities for people to step into their transformation for years. And then my clients started saying to me, I really just want a business like yours. I would love to do what you do. You know, can you help me do what you do? So a lot of our clients started using the same business model and hosting their own groups and having their, I call it a container of support. When you have a group that is, when you as an individual, you're stepping into something that your coach or your mentor or your service provider has created as some boundaries for you, right? Because if we just go through life like we normally do, we wake up every day in the same energy, and I'm going to talk about this a lot today. We wake up in our default energy. And every single day we wake up that way, and life is pretty much going to go how it normally goes for us. And so the beauty of creating a container of support or hiring someone to create that for you is that it provides a structure and a framework for you to grow. And without it, a lot of times we keep waking up in our default energy, and then we keep attracting the same things. And then we keep wondering, well, I have these big visions and I have these ideas, but somehow I keep attracting the same people. Like Divya, I changed jobs. I know you've changed careers. I changed careers. I was in corporate working as a product development engineer. And I changed jobs. I became a high school math teacher. So you would think completely different, right? But I kept feeling like I am working with the same people. Like I had the same complaints, the same frustrations, all of the same things were happening in my world, even though it was a totally different job. And that's when I had to look within and go, this is me. This is my energy. It's my way of being that's continuing to attract this. It's not the job. It's not the people. And that's what happens as entrepreneurs too, right? We have this vision, but if we're not shifting our energy and who we're being, we're going to keep recreating the same thing. So when I was tuning into your group and your theme of transformation, I'm imagining that there are some people that have really big visions. Yes?
Yes.
Like, what do you know about some of the people that are coming to your event?
Well, what I know about our group in general is that a lot, and I was just popping this in the chat, but I think my spelling got a little messed up there. But a lot of the women who are a part of our ladies lunch group, they understand this whole thing about, taking your energy wherever it is that you go, because a lot of them have been in that corporate role and transition to entrepreneurship or something like that, and they've definitely seen that the people that you're dealing with on a daily basis, they if you're not changing or shifting your energy, they definitely do tend to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people relate to it a lot in relationship. Like, how do I keep dating the same person? Even though they look totally different, it sometimes is easier to see there.
Yep.
So, what I want to start with, Divya, is a specific idea, which is the idea that what your soul wants is actually the most practical thing you can do. What your soul wants is the most practical thing you can do. And so I want to talk about soul a little bit, because for me, it was a few years ago, I got this message to start incorporating soul connection into my work. And I went, oh, I don't even think that I'm qualified to do that. So I've invested a lot of time, energy, and money in connecting with my soul and really even understanding what that means. So your soul is your unique slice of what I call source energy. So there is, the spiritual energy of all that is, and we come into this body as a unique being in this lifetime. And our soul actually has a really beautiful guidance and a really unique energy. So each of us have a really specific and unique energy that we came here to be. But mostly we were raised by people who maybe didn't see or acknowledge that, right? So they were saying you're too much, or children should be seen or not heard, or you have to be smart, or you have to be this, you have to be that, right? And they didn't stop to tune in, because we didn't have these tools, and say, oh, what is the spirit of this child, right? And let me nurture the unique spirit of this child. No, we're told, here's how you get good grades, here's how you get a job, here's how you stay safe. And so we're systematically taught to ignore our own inner knowing about what it is we want. And Divya, I know you and I are both fans of human design, which helps us to understand how our intuition speaks to us. And it comes through in different ways, but we all have this consistent access to knowing what our soul wants. But we're so programmed to ignore it. Yes. Or, and I'm curious, I would love to hear from people in the chat. How many of you have had a knowing, this is what I want, or this is what I'm meant to do, and then everything in your rational mind says that's crazy, like, I can't do that, people don't do that, that's not the smart thing to do, whatever it is? I'm curious if people have had this happen.
Well, I can raise my hand right here, because it happened to me maybe twice, because once I was working, on the allopathic side of medicine. I was working in research with my wonderful rats, and hoping that someday the drug that I was going to hopefully develop was going to be wonderful and cure a bunch of things, and I'd have my name on those commercials that are on TV. Big plan, right? But that was really not my dream. My dad was a scientist who was working in the lab and doing all of those things, but that wasn't really my dream at all. And then transitioning into a more holistic environment, that felt really a lot better for me. And then going to leading retreats, nobody's ever really embraced, why is this doctor leading retreats? That makes no sense to anyone, but here we are. So
yeah. And in making those transitions, did it feel like this is crazy?
It felt like the world was ending.
Yeah, like I'm a crazy person, and who has taken over my decision-making capacity, right?
Absolutely.
Yet when we make those decisions that are in alignment with our soul, it really is the most practical thing. So I have a story. It's kind of a crazy story, but it demonstrates it so beautifully. So back years ago, first of all, I knew I wanted to be a coach and I knew I wanted to do this work. But that seemed crazy, right? It was like, who's going to pay me? I was in my 20s. Like, how could I possibly help anybody? Who's going to think that that's a good idea? And so I was really ignoring that calling. And so even though I was on the verge of doing this, instead, I actually decided to get married. I was like contemplating leading retreats. I could see these, workshops and how everything was going to unfold. And instead I met this person and everything in me went, do this instead, right? Because it felt safe and it felt more comfortable. And the person was really dysfunctional. It kind of reminded me of my family growing up. There was a lot of unhealthy patterns. And I went, yes, that's what I'm going to do, right? My ego said, yes, I'm going to do that. It feels comfortable. I'm going to just get married. And that way I can ignore all of these other things going on. So long story short, I got married. I got divorced 6 months later, or separated 6 months later and divorced a year later. And at the end of all of that experience, I had this debt. I had $24,000 in debt on a credit card. And I was trying to figure out, Divya, how am I going to pay this debt? How am I going to pay this debt? How am I going to solve this issue? And I went through all these seemed to work. It was like, oh, that is going to take forever. So my solution was I'm going to stop going out to eat and, use that money to pay my debt. And then one day I had this experience. I had a meeting with this woman, and in talking with her, so first of all, energy transfers, right? We talked a little bit about energy. So I had a meeting with this woman who's super tuned in, super connected to source. And my friend said, have coffee with her. So I had coffee with her, and I'm driving home from this meeting and I'm so committed to changing my life. Like I knew I wanted to run a business, but I was like, well, I have this debt. Now I definitely can't do it, right? I definitely can't start a business with debt. Like who does that? That's impossible. I'm going to fail. And so I said a little prayer after meeting with this woman, and we just talked about, various things, nothing in particular. But I said a little prayer and I start driving home. And my prayer was, obviously I don't have the answer. I surrender. And that was the prayer I said. And I wasn't super spiritual at the time. And I'm driving home, driving on the highway, on the same highway I've driven on many, many times. And I'm thinking about the same things I've always been thinking about. What are all the ways I can fix this situation, right? And so I'm driving, and I start thinking about my retirement account. And I taught high school, I mentioned that, for 2 years. And I had this nice retirement account for teaching for 2 years. And I had a couple retirement accounts. But anyway, I'm thinking about my retirement account. And all of a sudden my car swerved on the highway. Just out of nowhere, it just swerved. And I thought, that's really weird. And I just keep driving. And all of a sudden I realized, what I was thinking about in the moment that happened was I was thinking about this retirement account and cashing it out. And as I was thinking about it, my car swerved on the highway. Now this is totally weird and freaky to me, right? Especially at that time, I didn't have a great spiritual connection. And so I'm thinking about it and like, I think that was a sign. I think I'm being guided to cash out this retirement account and pay off this debt, because this debt was weighing on me so heavily I couldn't think about anything else. And my logical mind said, do not do that, right? You're going to pay extra fees to withdraw it, the early withdrawal, plus you have to pay the taxes, plus this, plus that, You should never take it out, right? Only someone who's stupid would ever do that. And Divya, I had a whole identity of being smart. right? Like I'm an engineer and I got a good job and I did all the right things and I have to look smart and that's how I get love. And there's no possible way I could make this stupid decision. But Spirit told me to. I think there was something in me that said that was no accident. Spirit told me to. So I debated it for like a week. And then I went ahead and cashed out my retirement account. And I paid off my debt. And the week after I did that, I got a call and I got interviewed for a job that paid $35,000 more, the exact amount I had taken out of my retirement to pay my debt plus taxes, right? And I got that job within a couple weeks. The exact amount of money came back within a couple weeks. Now, that's really, really cool and exciting. And then what happened is the company I got hired at got bought, and I actually got a severance package. So not only did I pay my debt, but I got a big chunk of money to start my business with. And for me, those are linked, right? So my default energy is be smart, do the right thing, figure it out. And my default energy would have taken, 5 years or whatever to pay that off. But I trusted this different energy, and it opened up this flow in my life that I had never experienced before. There's no way I could have planned that. And it literally fell in my lap. I didn't even go looking for it. But I had to make that choice to trust a different energy. And a lot of times when our soul is telling us something, but our logical mind or our default, experience says, it's not safe, it doesn't fit with who I was told I have to be in life, we shut it down. But when we can step into really trusting our soul, right? It seemed very unpractical to cash out the retirement, and it ended up being the best thing ever. What our soul wants is actually the most practical thing we can do. And, that's a strange story. Not a lot of people will have that same story, but I can tell you there are so many stories from myself and my clients of we're getting the pull toward the energy that is our divine expression, right? For me, that energy was, I don't play by rules. Like there's no part of my true authentic self that is committed to following old rules. I'm just not, right? But I had been stuck in that paradigm. So making that choice opened me up to get to be more of who I am. And that's the way our soul communicates with us. And I believe that's our job. And that's our, especially as conscious entrepreneurs, our job is to become more of who we came here to be as business owners and spread that person as opposed to that old energy. Yeah. So I'm going to read the chat. What's coming up, Divya? Do you have specific questions?
Well, it's interesting that you were able to tune in to the fact that this is definitely the path that you should take, because I feel as though sometimes the energy is a little bit subtle. Like it told you to, turn to the right, and to make the correlation sometimes is a little tricky.
Yes, it is. It is. And the thing that as in looking back on it, and I just was writing about this, in looking back on it, because I had that meeting with this woman who was so tuned in to spiritual energy, we entrain to other people's energy.
Yes.
Now, and this is true if you're around a lot of people who are saying, you should be practical and, that doesn't make sense and you should follow the rules, or you should be this way, or you need to be that way. We entrain to that too, right? So I had been in this environment spending time with this woman who opened me up to a different energetic where I was able to receive it. And this is why retreats and getting out of your environment, and what you're creating is so important, because we can get in the energy of that positive intention, you know, and when we're just kind of waking up every day in our default, we're in default, right?
If you just take a look in the chat, you'll see Elizabeth, who is a dear friend of mine. When you meet Elizabeth, you will love her. She's just mentioning in the chat that she identifies with your story because last year she quit her job. She's a single mom.
Gosh, I see
She
it.
had
That's
debt,
amazing.
and she's already on track. So
Elizabeth, I honor you because I wasn't as brave as you. So way to go. Hi, Pamela. Yes, of course I know you.
Pam is awesome.
What's your method? I'll talk about the method for connecting to source in a little bit. There's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
What questions are coming up? So I'm going to talk a little bit, and guys, feel free to put the questions in the chat. I want to talk about the default energy versus the sourced energy. So I talked about that a little bit, right? So there's nothing wrong with our default energy, okay? It's not bad. It's not like we're never wrong. In my worldview, there's never anything wrong with you. The default energy is just programming us to attract certain things, right? So we're going to kind of attract what we've always gotten. And if you look at, like for me, I live, you know, pretty far away from my family, right? But a lot of times when people are close to their family and they grow up together, and you notice like a family has a certain energy, right? Probably most people who are here, Divya, feel like the odd man out in their family, I'm guessing. But, you know, energy transfers, and there's nothing wrong with the default. It's just that if you're being called to something more, if you have a vision, whether it is to make more money, to shift the money patterns in your family, or you're being called to bring a certain message forward or transform, you know, the way people do medicine, Divya, the way that we think about caring for our bodies. If you have a calling like that, you're not going to create it from your default energy. And in fact, I believe inherent in our calling is the invitation to break free from the default energy. And that's part of our journey as a soul on the planet, is to go from, you know, hey, I came in this pure being of light and love, right? And then life happened, and I started picking up all these different beliefs that said that wasn't who I was. And that our job is to, you know, one transformation after another to return more to the wholeness of who we actually came here to be. And our soul knows who that is, even if our conscious mind doesn't always know. So there's nothing wrong with the default energy. And for me personally, I've chosen to live with a commitment to being in the other type of energy as often as possible. And I call it sourced energy. So there's default energy, which is based on our programming. It's based on the past. It's based on fears or constraints that we've been given. And then there is sourced energy, which is coming from this pull from your soul, right? And so the question is, and the sourced energy is very creative. It's going to be very distinct to you. Okay. And ultimately each of our souls has a unique energy signature, but I don't think that I even know the fullness of my soul's energy yet. Right. So the way that I like to play with it is to think about, what energy am I sourcing right now? And each transformation we go through, I teach something called the anatomy of a transformation, right? And it starts with a discomfort and a desire. And when our desire is greater than our fear of change, or our discomfort is greater than our fear of change, then we will transform. And at the other side of a transformation, we step into a new sourced energy. And that source energy should speak to your soul. It should feel exciting and inviting and like light you up. Like right now, the energy I'm operating from is called pristine. And that's the energy I'm playing with. And usually it lasts for a season, and then you'll get called into it. Then you'll get a new discomfort, right? Or a new desire, and you'll move through the cycle again. But what's beautiful, you can always ask yourself, am I coming from the default or am I coming from sourced energy? By really looking at how much flow are we in.
Flow.
So if things are flowing, I'm likely in a sourced energy. If they're feeling sticky or stuck, I'm in a default. And that's not bad, because sometimes we need to get in that sticky stuck to actually see clearly, like, oh, that's not the energy I want anymore. I want to choose this, right? So there's no judgment in the process of transformation.
Yes, absolutely. I like what you're saying about it's really meaningful to me that you're making the distinction that there's nothing wrong with, being in your default energy. It is there to allow you to see what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want, and that the desire is what pulls you forward into your transformation. And when you get to that stage of the discomfort being greater, then you can step over into the next phase. And there's always going to be something that's going to be pulling you forward. There's always going to be something else that you want, because we're never ever going to be at a stage where everything, we're always growing, we're always changing. And if we're not, then we've moved on.
Yeah, I do tend to hold the belief that once we align fully, we move on to the next life,
Yes.
right? Yeah, because our soul has these different lessons.
Yes.
I see this question from Robin. Can it really be that simple? And I tend to overcomplicate things and keep swirling around figuring it out rather than trusting what source has for me. And it's really, really interesting, Robin. I just wrote, I'm writing my next book, and I was just writing about this idea of figuring it out, right? I'm like, I could have the t-shirt or the badge of honor or the crown or the queen of figuring it out, right? Like my brain is really good at figuring things out, but that's default energy, right? That was what I had to do growing up to survive, was figure out, right? And solve problems. And
that's your engineer mind.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's natural, and it's really great for my clients because I can see something and I can, I see patterns in the way my mind works, and it really helps my clients, which is great, but it doesn't help me. And when we are in a place of figuring it out, our ego might feel really good. Like, that's what I got rewarded for as a kid. Oh, okay, everyone's in crisis. Let me figure it out. Let's stay calm. And it's just, it doesn't have a juice for me anymore, right? Because there's other energies that are more fun to play with. So Robin, can it really be this simple? Yes. And your ego is designed to keep you safe. So if figuring it out is part of how you stayed safe, right? And for me, growing up in a household where there was alcoholism and people were in different moods depending on what was happening, and I could see the patterns, right? I could know, like, oh, is this a day where I should hide? Or is this a day where it's okay to have fun today, right? Is it safe today or is it not safe today? And so, in my mind, my survival depended on figuring it out. So there was a lot of, and then I went on to be an engineer, and our default energy typically chooses our first career, right? So I went on to be an engineer where I was rewarded for figuring it out. Well, great, check the box. But I got promoted for that skill, and I felt so empty inside. And that was a really big signal of like, and now looking back, I can see I was being rewarded for the way I was programmed to be, but there's no joy in the default. There's no deep fulfillment when we're coming from default. We can get all the external accolades. You might make a lot of money. You might have a great title. Everything might look good on the outside, but there's no joy in the default. And so, where your soul is calling you to be is where the joy is. And so, Robin, two things I would say. Yes, it can really be that simple. Like, it really is that simple. And our ego mind, which is associated with our default energy, is going to keep putting it through the old filter. So if the old filter is figuring it out, everything that feels exciting can come back through that filter of figuring it out until you resolve that, right? Until there's no juice in figuring it out anymore.
I would say also to Robin's question, can it be this simple? I would say yes, and it can be this simple, but we've been sort of trained our whole lives that it's not this simple. So the work is really to embrace the guidance and to allow it to be simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And if figuring it out was how you got rewarded, it just makes sense why it would feel like it can't be that simple. So there's two paths to making this shift, okay, from the default energy to the sourced energy. And one way is when we just get so tired of the default, it's just like, it's not even interesting to me anymore, right? Like I said, figuring it out has no juice for me anymore. So when I find myself going into figuring it out, I'm like, oh, I know I've been down that road so many times. I know it's just tiring and it's not really serving me. I can choose something different. So that literally it can be that simple. However, because this new energy, we don't know the result we'll get. We don't know the result we'll get by having super pristine boundaries in a way that we never have before. Like, it might feel scary. Like, am I going to be alone? Is that going to work? Will anybody like me? Am I going to be a bitch? Am I going to right? Like, so it can be that simple, but we're afraid to go down that path because the default has a secure outcome. Like, I pretty much know that I know how to figure shit out. Like, I know that, and I know that I'll be good at it, and I know it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, I know I can figure out the next thing. And I know how to be in that energy, whereas the new energy is scary, right? So one way to make the shift is to just say, I'm tired of that old energy, and this is pulling to me, and I'm going for it. When this feels too uncertain for us, it's because there's some kind of energetic block, right? It's like the pattern is stored in our energy field and we need to clear it. And so the second way is to really look at, where is that energy stored? When did we store it there? Why did we store it there? How is it serving us, right? And give it really the space to be seen and really allow ourselves to be with that truth, right? And an example of that would be, hey, I'm really willing to see that the truth is, I get a lot of gold stars for figuring things out. And up until now, those gold stars were more important to me than my own happiness and freedom, just as an example. So there's a whole process that I teach, and I believe it's best delivered on retreat. Davia has a live retreat coming up all about transformation. We have a retreat coming up in April that's all about connecting to source. Like, if you have been in a place where you're trying to choose the new energy over and over again, but you keep getting sucked back into the old, get yourself in a container with some guidance to help you see and identify that old energy pattern and heal it, release it, integrate the pieces that still work for you, and let go of the rest. Elizabeth, I I love this question so much, and I think that you're probably not alone. Elizabeth says, I do stay connected to source, and in capital, I'm with my family every day, some of which are in a very different vibe than me. How would you recommend we stay connected with source when we don't want to just stay away from people? And I'm curious, raise your hand if other people have had this, this dilemma. And it really is a dilemma. And, there's two answers to this question. So I believe when we're in a place of stepping into a brand new energy field, and it's really, really new to us, and it feels really uncertain, it is best to really highly minimize contact with people that are in a different vibration. So it's kind of like if you're just starting to work out, that the first, couple weeks, it's like challenging to go, but then you get in a pattern and it's just like, oh, I got this, and nobody will deter you, right? It's a similar thing. So when you're really connected, you can be with people who are in a different vibration and not have it sway you when you're really solid in your connection. If you are new to that, the boundary needs to be really, really strong while you work your muscle, right? And once you work up your muscle, you can expose yourself more and know that you have the tools to come back to your center. And people are amazing at rationalizing, subjecting themselves to energies that don't serve them. Like, we're really, really amazing at that. Like, I can handle it, or it's not that big a deal, or it's only a little while, or it's my mom, or, right? We're really, really amazing at rationalizing that. But especially when you're building the muscle, and by the way, it's not like you build the muscle once and then you're done. When you're in a place where you're going to a whole new level, whether it is a new level in your money mindset, or you're launching a new business, you have a whole new message and it needs to be really vibrationally sound, limit that contact and don't be afraid to set those boundaries, truly. And that's with specific people that they're a very different vibe, and that after you're with them, you leave in a different energy. That doesn't mean that you have to stay away from all people. It's also why, join a community and get connected with people who are in your vibration, so that you have those places to go, and be real about it. If you're going to go, I have a friend who went on vacation with her mom, right? And she set up specifically connection during and after the trip to keep her vibration tuned, because she knew that, right? So you don't be afraid to, if you have people who get it in your life, to say, hey, I'm going, to be with my family. Could you meet me for coffee afterward? Like, you've got to really treat your energy field like it matters. We go to sleep so quickly. So I love that you noticed that. I have relatively minimal contact with my family of origin. I visit, I love them dearly. And I do visit them regularly, meaning once a year. And I speak to my mom, I check in with her all the time. But I know when I can feel, you start to feel when your energy starts getting entrained, right? And I have a lot of boundaries and tools for clearing, and I'm not afraid to just hang up. Yeah, let's see if there's other questions here. What do you call the signature of your soul? Monique, Monique asked, what do you call the signature of your soul? I don't have a real concise way of talking about that yet, or teaching that. I'm sure it's going to come out as I continue to write my book. But there is an energy that you came here to express, and it's probably a combination of words or ways of being that are uniquely you. And the more you can know what those are and stay tuned into them, the more you're expressing as who you are uniquely. For me, I think it's all, we're here to play with those different energies. So for example, I'm playing with the energy of pristine at this time. When you play with them, you know, like, oh, this is for a season, or, oh, this is really a part of who I am. Like one of the energies that's a part of who I am is joy. And it's been one of my biggest challenges. I was raised in a household where joy was not okay, right? There was always something to complain about. But that's a part of my unique energetic that I'm here to be, is joy and celebration. And so I know when I get too heavy, it's like, that's not who I am. That's not who I came here to be.
I think one of my signature energies is fun. And it's interesting because I need to have more of that.
Good, great. So perfect. So then what would, I'll give a couple exercises you can do. And again, there's so many paths to this, and there's a lot of ways to heal stuck, stored energy. There's a lot of paths to transformation. So there's not necessarily one way. But Divya, I want to give you, if fun is it, and you're like, there's not enough fun happening, the question to ask yourself is, how would fun handle this situation, right? And have that be like, how would fun handle it? And your ego mind, or your old default energy, is going to go, yeah, but we can't have fun until we've got all the work done, until all those spots are filled, until this is it. But if fun is part of your soul's signature, it's like it has to come first, and it's going to make those other things happen. But our ego is going to tell us, no, it's not okay to be joyful if someone else is suffering. One of the things that's happened for me a lot in the last couple of years is that in the moments where the most joyful things are happening in my life, something really shitty happens in the life of someone I love. And that's been my ability to practice being joy even when that's happening. Yeah. Like it's okay to have fun even if the work's not done. It's okay to be in joy even if people are struggling on the planet, right? Because my struggle doesn't help their struggle.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other piece you can do is, if you have fun at the top of a paper, and Divya, I love my T-charts, right? Line down the middle. And on one side is, what am I available for now if I'm coming from fun? And the other side is, what is fun not available for? Right? And you can do a little inventory of your life, right? Like, what are the things I'm doing that match with fun that I'm available for? If I were to have more fun, what would I need to be available for? And if I'm in fun, what no longer gets my attention? And then you can use that as a guide, and use it over a couple of weeks and just play with it and notice what shows up, right? Because fun is a sourced energy for you. Yes. So if you're in fun, more fun is coming. And that's where the flow will happen. But our ego mind goes, if you don't mind sharing, Divya, what's your story about fun? Like, what's the reason you feel like fun isn't okay?
I don't know. I feel like, you're grown up now, and you're a doctor, and you need to be busy and doing things. And I'm the kind of person who, if there are dishes in the sink, it's going to drive me crazy. I can't even do anything else. I left my dishes the other morning because I was playing with my kids before they went on the bus, and I got to work and I said to Sandy, there are dishes in the sink. That sort of thing happens.
Yeah, great. So that would be a great thing to look at. Am I available for dishes?
I'm not available for dishes, by the way.
So if I'm not available specifically for doing dishes, then it's like, well, what's the solution? Do I need support for doing dishes? Do I need someone else to do the dishes? Do I need to have a principle of, you know, dishes second, fun first, dishes second? Is there a
Yeah,
way
I
to
think
make
that's the
dishes
same.
fun? Is there, right? Like then you start to look at how do you want to do that in alignment with fun? And, you know, there's always things that we do that we are like, you know, we're always learning. So it's not like life is always going to be everything exactly how we want it, but it's always an opportunity to declare more of the energy that you want.
I like Wendy Lee's question. How do you create the flow and make things happen? Like both at the same time.
Yeah. So if I read between the lines in that question, I love that question. There's an assumption that flow looks like this, right? That it's not looking like making things happen. You know, it's interesting if we think about the idea, even the language of make things happen, right? Like we have to make it happen versus receive, open up, activate, allow, right? So that's one, just even looking at the language of it, Wendy, would be helpful. But flow doesn't mean doing nothing, right? So for example, in my example I shared at the top, it's like someone called me and said, hey, are you interested in this job? I made a resume. I scheduled the interview. I had the interview. I said yes. I took, right? Like I took the action, but it started from that soul desire. And a lot of times our mind or our default energy wants to take over and say, this is how I have to make it happen because this is what I've been taught, as opposed to getting that soul knowing first. And so for me, and I'll circle back to, I think it was Pamela that asked about tuning in. So for me, I have a morning practice with my soul. Today I did it while walking. Usually I sit still, but sometimes I just need to move. But it's not with an agenda, right? It's really, I'm open to receive. And I set my alarm for 5 to 10 minutes. Usually it's 7, of being open to receive. And sometimes I receive nothing, okay? And everybody's got to learn to discern how you receive. So I receive, sometimes I get words, sometimes I get pictures, but most often I get a feeling physically in my body. So I've personally studied a lot of mind-body connection, right? And like, oh, if my right eye twitches, this is the, you know, what that energy is about, right? At one point I injured my shoulder, my right shoulder, which is shouldering the burden for others. It's the masculine, it's the doing, it's the holding everything, right? So a lot of times things come through my body physically and it's very, very subtle. But I sit and I tell spirit I'm available every day. And what's great about that, and Wendy, the biggest thing that I have found that gets in my way, that might be helpful for you, is my level of impatience. I want to know all the things to do to get the outcome. Like I want to know the whole plan. Like, please tell me the whole plan. And what I find is I get one step. And until I take that step or like start on that path, I don't get the next step. And my ego wants the next step. But I get one step. And we think, well, come on, spirit, until you give me the whole plan, I'm not going to take the step, right? It's too scary. It's too risky. And so then our mind comes in and decides, well, I have to make something happen. Because perhaps the step is call one person, or perhaps the step is write this thing. For, you know, one day I got, just start writing, right? With a pen, with your hand write the messages that you want to share in your business. Just handwrite them. It's like, well, what do I do with that? Right? That's not helpful. It's in my notebook. What do I do with it? But that was the first message. And I had to do that before I got a next step. So Wendy, we do take action, we do make things happen, but it's not in the, and I know Wendy, you teach about masculine and feminine, right? It's not in, we're trained in the very masculine way to do a business. Do this, do that. I'm an engineer, so I'm extra trained in the very, structured masculine way to do business. But flow is more feminine. And, I love that you're creating this gathering, Divya, because we need to band together and make it okay to lead in a more feminine way. This idea that we have to have all the answers well in advance and make everybody aware of them all the time, and only then can we be successful. It discounts the power of our energy field and what we can create when we're in sourced and we get that inspiration and we take the action.
Yeah, I like what you're talking about, getting the inspiration and then creating the action. For you get, when you get your communications, they tend to be very different from mine. Mine are full-on conversations, like things that
Great. Yeah. So say more about that.
Never
comfortable. People might have that.
Never comfortable sharing, and yet here I am on this Prenote sharing it. But full-on conversation, like for example, with the whole ladies' lunch situation and having a fall conference. This was an instruction. I was literally told to do this, and I wasn't given a format of at all how it's going to go down. And so I just got a hit to mention it to one person and mention it to one other person. And the next thing you know, there are all these people who are banding together to help to make our fall conference for Ladies Lunch a reality. And I didn't even say to one person, could you help me make this happen? Everybody jumped on all by themselves. So I absolutely agree that work is involved with, getting things to happen. I'm not even going to use the word make it happen, but having an outcome. But I think waiting on the flow first is the key to having a successful outcome.
It's such a great example. And then our project management mind comes in, or, however we were trained. So everybody has different training from their background. I have had an event come through also, and it came through like really clearly what the intention is, and it's a collaborative experience. And I've asked for dates, right? I've asked my soul for dates, and it's like, no, not yet. Talk to people first. So it's like I shaped a little bit of a vision of it, and then I'm talking to people about it who would want to partner on it. And I don't have a date, and I don't have a location, and I don't know exactly, what people are going to get. I just know they're going to get something because I wouldn't have been given the direction. And the more we can learn to trust and lead in that way, I find the more joy. Like, have you had a lot of joy in the conversations you've been having?
Oh, I just got chills. So much joy, Darla. I mean, so much joy, and also so much connection with people who maybe if I hadn't been having this kind of conversation with them, that connection would never have happened. It's been really awesome. And I absolutely, what I am holding on to right now is trying to remind myself that I don't need to see the whole plan. I really don't need to see the whole plan. And like you, I'm a planner. I make lists of my lists, and I'm not even kidding. Like, my lists have lists. This is not a joke.
And I think, I really want to share with people, and I'm in the process of writing my next book, and it's really based on, I've led more than 70 retreats now. I've watched people walk in one energy and walk out another over and over and over again. And I've seen them attract relationships, end relationships, start businesses, end businesses, end job, and totally change their life coming from this sourced energy. And then, obviously I started training people because people said, I want to do what you do. And the thing that you guys have to know is when I did my first retreat, I had 182 PowerPoint slides and I had everything planned and I had a workbook and people filled in the workbook and like, I still did manage to get magic in there, right? Like the transformation happened, the magic happened, but it was very scripted. And in leading so many retreats and watching our clients lead retreats, it was probably about my fourth one where I realized I am never gonna have the plan, right? And it was probably my 8th or 10th one where I finally went, oh, do you know what? Stop trying to have the plan. Because there's so much conventional wisdom in you have to have the agenda and you have to know everything that's happening and you have to have the handouts and you have to do this and you have to tell your team what you're doing. You can't just show up and do whatever you want and your team doesn't even know what's happening, right? And so I would stress, the whole week leading up to a retreat, I'd be with my notebook and I'd be like, oh, I don't know, is it this, is it that? And I would do that for so long. And the more I let go, the more the magic happens. And I always know exactly what needs to happen when it needs to happen, and sometimes it doesn't look like anything I would have planned. And I've seen the miracles happen by I let go of my agenda and, this person needed to say this because this person needed to heal it. And because this person was here, this person healed this thing. And it had nothing to do with me or my agenda, right? And so I've seen spirit working in these miraculous ways so many times that I can't not believe it. And so the moment we go into, I have to figure it out, I have to push, I have to struggle, I have to make it happen, we just know we're not sourced. And that's not bad. It's like, oh, isn't that funny? Look at me, how I tried to control that again. And we can make a change. And we can make a change and we can make a change over and over and over. I would love to share a resource with people if that's okay. Davia, I have this really cool lesson that I recorded for some of our sourced retreat participants. And I'm going to put the link in the chat because it's not actually a pretty link. It's a Lead Pages link. So I'm putting the link in the chat. And this is a lesson. I think it's the most appropriate gift I can give based on this conversation. It's really about masculine and feminine energies and how to find your aligned expression. So some of us are more masculine, right? I'm married to a woman. I don't know if everybody knows that. And I am the more masculine energy in my relationship. And I look more feminine, but I am the more masculine energy. Like I'm the one that's like, all right, we're going to get this done. We're going to make a plan. We got the checklist and this is happening. And I tend to play that role more. And my wife tends to play more of the nurturing role. And yet we both experience both energies. Okay. And to kind of go back to that question that Monique had about like, what's my soul signature? We have a unique way that we are here to express masculine and feminine. As women entrepreneurs, we get really conflicted about this, right? Because it's like, well, I have all of this conditioning, this default energy about what it is to be a woman. And then I have all of this default energy about what it is to be a business owner, which it tends to be masculine, right? Because, it's only in recent years that we've been business leaders. So we tend to get really conflicted about that. And any place where we're conflicted about energy, we won't hear the message from source, right? If it comes in and it says, Wendy, I'll just use this example, like, hey, let it go, let it flow. Let's say source says that, right? Maybe you get an image of a river flowing and it's like, oh yeah, flow. I just got to let it flow. But your conditioning says, but to be a business person, I have to be doing this. then we will say, well, that's not my message. I don't want that message. Give me a different message. Right? Or we'll say, okay, I got it. But not like, now what do I do? And it's like, well, until you do that, you're not going to get the next message. But if we won't surrender to that message because it doesn't fit with our program for who we have to be, then we won't hear it. So this, I put a link in the chat. This audio is all about really connecting with your unique balance of masculine, feminine. I take you through a guided meditation where you really look at and get information from your soul about how you're meant to express, and to be able to heal and integrate the parts of you that thought you had to be somehow different. Robin, I'll pop the link again just in case. And Divya, I am sure I can send it out to everyone registered, and I'm sure you can send it out to your people as well.
Yes.
But it's a really cool resource. Monique, I know, has done it. So she said it's cool. We have social proof. I really love this lesson, and masculine and feminine energy is just one way to look at it. But it's like anytime we have a default energy that says, this is who I can be or who I can't be, we're going to miss the messages of who we came here to be. And that's really the point. The other thing I wanted to share, Divya, I am coming to the East Coast for a retreat. So if anybody is interested in retreating with me, you can just shoot a little message and you can just say, hey, Divya sent me. We have a retreat in April in Cape Cod, and it's got two intentions. The first is to walk you through this sourced experience where you really become aware of the default energy. We go through a process to help you create awareness, to heal it, to release it, to integrate it into your beingness, and to create that new sourced energy. So you'll walk out knowing those words that really are speaking to you and calling you forward at this time. And then the second intention is to support people who want to do that work for their clients. So if you want to integrate transformational work, most of our clients like to do retreats. You want to integrate that into your business. We have a whole section on how to do that, how to, like, the business of transformation and how to sell transformation and how to invite people to retreat with you. So we have a whole section on that as well. So if you're interested in that, you can email support@sourcedexperience.com and say Divya sent me.
Awesome.
Yay, I'll pop that in here too. Divya, any other questions?
You know, I think I really like the direction that our conversation is going in today. And what's really interesting and kind of in a way heartwarming is that a lot of people seem to relate to the topics that we had, the things that we've been discussing. And it kind of makes you feel like, geez, I'm not alone in this. You know, there are other people who have the same sorts of questions and the same sorts of concerns. And just even knowing that makes a big difference, I think. I like also the idea of being able to tune into source and allowing for the guidance and knowing that you never get it wrong, and that if you're finding yourself disconnected, okay, that's also a message that you know what your next step should be to get connected again when you can. So I really like the direction that the conversation is going, and I invite everybody to, you know, let's keep the conversation going over in the Ladies Power Lunch Facebook group. Let's keep the conversation going when we meet up for our next meeting, which is our event on March 16th. Yeah. Where it's gonna definitely be a hands-on workshop style all day event, and we're gonna have goal setting and strategic planning, and we're going to have all the experts there except for Darla because she's here on the Prenote. But we're really going to be going deeper into a lot of this, and we are going to be doing it together. So it's going to be a great opportunity. And if anybody has an opportunity to join us, because I'm definitely going to make sure that I'm there for Darla's retreat in Cape Cod, I cannot endorse it any more than I already am.
Amazing.
Can't miss it.
I'm so excited. You know, what I want to leave people with is when you're at the event with Davia and you're doing the strategy and you're looking at both the inner and the outer, because they go together, right? Like it's not, you do connect to source, but then you do need to take action, and the strategy is helpful. I want to challenge everybody to risk coming from a sourced energy rather than a default. So when you walk in, you have all the defaults that come in, like I'm safe with people who look like this. I sit in the back. I and only like to talk to one person, or I always go rescue the person who's alone, or what, you know, your default of how you be at events, right? Challenge yourself to be different. If you're inspired by joy or fun, right? Like, what would that be like? What if you did the fun parts and you gave yourself permission to not do the parts that aren't fun? Or, you know, challenge yourself to go there, and don't be afraid to share with the person next to you, like, hey, this is what I'm working on internally. Because we come and we say, oh, I want to have 10 new clients this year, or I want to hit this goal, or I want to start a podcast, or I want to write a book, or, but also it's okay to say, I really want to feel more at peace day in and day out when I do my business. Or I'm really noticing that I tend to attract these clients who are a pain in the ass, and I would like to not do that anymore. Or, right? Like, don't be afraid to share this, because I've been masterminding with $1 million business owners for years, and those are the real conversations that move the needle. And you know, I get in these rooms and people don't want to talk about those things, and when they finally do, when someone finally asks the question, which I like to do, you know, but how do you feel, or what do you really want, people are like, oh, yeah, let's talk about that. So don't trust that the person next to you wants to talk about that too.
Awesome.
Thanks, Davia. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your energy with us. And I hope to meet some of you in person, and some of you I know, and have so much fun at the event. I really wish I could be there, and I'm excited that you have another one coming up.
Yay.
Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Darla. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Bye. Bye.